go down about, there we are, 25 centimeters, which is there, or that is about 10.5 inches. We'll say 10.5 inches. There we are. If you're in Imperial, and then 10.5 inches on that side, and then you can draw a line from there to there. Now, what you could do if you wanted to, you could get some masking tape, which is another thing I suggest you get in the actual studio, and get them in rolls like this. Now these personally I use a low tack one, but if you haven't got a low tack one, just tap it on your clothing like that, or your apron, and that's going to put some fibres on there and stop it from sticking too bad onto your canvas. And you just measure that down, and you put the line on the line, because we're going to be painting the top bit first. Now what I envisioned in this particular painting is an area roughly that much, which is just over half or a quarter. It's about a quarter of the canvas. That's going to be sky, and there might be a couple of peaks and mountains in there, which you're going to see through, because this is going to be a forest path type of thing. But if you do it with me, then you should have the same result. So what we're going to do is paint all this area blue. Now and put this on fairly thickly. Don't over spread it. And what you need to do is a really good coverage, because you don't want this to dry on you. It's a wet on wet technique at the end of the day, and we can add a little bit of water to this. As far as the mister bottle is concerned, we can give it a little bit of a spray, but it all depends on the environment and where you live. If it's a very warm climate, then you may need to just spray it with a touch of water. There you go. So we'll just continue putting this on, like I said, fairly thickly, but not over thick. So you need to find a happy medium, and I don't mean a happy gloss medium. Okay. So if you wanted to, then you could get your mister bottle and you just give it a squirt, and if the water droplets, if the nozzle is too big, you're going to have big water droplets coming out of there, and that's going to cause you problems, because what's going to happen, they're going to settle onto the canvas and eventually they will pull the paint away. So every time you spray, you need to try and blend that in if you can. I've got a bit of contamination coming off my brush, but don't worry too much about that, because that doesn't worry me at this stage. And then you start up in the corner and you take that across. And then you just bring that down. This is what I said, you need to practice this. Not too worried about the right hand side of the canvas, because there's going to be trees there, I know, but we need to put the sky in anyway. And you can see how light the bottom of that sky is. This is what we wanted. What I suggest you do now is get some kitchen roll. Let's just move my light a second because it's reflecting rather badly. Let me just check the camera. Yes. Okay, so take some excess off, and then very lightly brush, very lightly, very lightly, hardly touching the canvas. Just go back and forth. If there's any lines there, you can blend them out. Blend that in, blend that sky in. Very lightly though, very lightly, hardly touching now. Very lightly, and I keep saying that because that's important. Don't want to touch the canvas too hard. We just merging these colours and nice and gently and softly, we're caressing the canvas. I picked up a little bit of dark blue because I went up there, but that doesn't matter, we can pull that in there. And there we go. And then we wash our brush. Okay, so getting the hairdryer once again, we need to dry remove the masking tape. Now I suggest when you remove it, pull it downwards like that. There you go. And trying to keep this, because what we're going to do with this now, whoops, what we're going to do with this now is get it and put it up there. And put that on top of the line this time. So what we want to do now is grab a brush. I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll get a palette knife. Now I do suggest you start using these because it's important. Get some yellow. We've got some on the palette there. Bring a nice chunk of yellow in, and we've already got some Prussian blue, and that's going to be ample enough to turn that into some green. Now you can use Mars black and yellow, and that's going to give you a green as well, because there's blue in the Mars black. Now let's get some black and mix that and turn that into a shade, because as you know, we mixing black into a colour gives us a shade, because I want a dark green underpainting, or not underpainting, what's the word you're looking for, Clive? Ground. Now I can mix that with gesso, but what is going to happen is if I did that, it's going to change its value. See how lighter it's getting? Now I don't want to do that. I want to keep this dark colour there. Now I know that's not enough, so if I start mixing more yellow and blue, then I'm going to have a big clump of paint. So this is where this particular thing comes in handy, and it's called extender. So we'll either put a little bit of that in with the paint. Now that doesn't change the colour, and that extends that particular mix by that much. Now I know a lot of you in the States are having difficulty finding extender, so you could use a matte medium that's readily available. Now this is that's exactly the same thing as the extender, it's just a bit thinner, so you could put a bit of that in there, and that acts as an extender also. But what it does, it actually thins your paint down rather than keeps it at the same consistency. But that's not a bad thing in this particular instance. Yeah, the other thing you could do, you could use some not glazy medium, Clive. You could actually put some here we are, we've got some heavy structure gel here. You can see that's quite thick. Now you can put some of that in with it, but what's going to happen is that is the opposite way then. That's a bit thicker than what we really need. That's going to be hard to brush on, but I'm just showing you a couple of different ways to extend your paint and to make that paint go a little bit further. There you go. See, that little bit of paint that we mix now is grown in volume, and we've got a lot more than we started off with. Now you can imagine if you put piles of yellow there and then piles of blue to try and get that, and you put black in it, you know, you're wasting a lot of paint. So that's where these extenders and matte mediums and other mediums come in handy, like structure gel, etc, etc. Okay, so let's put our palette knife one side. Let's clean this palette knife off. And a ground primarily is a gesso with pigment in it, and you don't have to be too accurate. This is not like painting the sky. All you're doing is getting a block of colour in to the bottom of the painting, because it takes away that brightness, which is going to affect the eye. It's a bit too much now, but it doesn't matter. We can always put that in one of those little pots and keep it one side. We're going to be using a lot of greens in this particular painting, so nothing is going to miss as far as that's concerned. Especially when you start editing and you can't do nothing about that. But I've got a 1/2 inch short flat, and I've also got a 3/8, so the same brushes we used before. I got some titanium white there. I got a little bit of gesso, but other than that, that's it. And we got our Prussian blue, which we're going to mix in as a shadow colour. And we're going to have a look at the actual canvas now. Okay, so just selecting your 1/2 inch, just put a bit of titanium white up on there, and if your paper's gone a little bit dry like mine, I've just give it a little bit of a squirt. And we're still continuing to use the medium mix formula for thinning. So just thin a little bit of that down. Don't get it too runny, you need to leave it reasonably thick. And then taking the excess off your brush and just picking up on the very tip of the brush. Don't know if you can see that there. So I think the mountain is going to be about there, I think. Okay, right, so if we mix a little bit of a Prussian blue in with the white, what we're doing is tinting that white blue, and let's draw in a couple of mountain shapes. Bring a little bit more blue in, which is just a little bit. Oops, I couldn't do that if I tried. There we go. That's better. Not too worried about where things are going to go as such at the moment. All I'm doing is worrying about blocking in the colour. Now we said that's what we were doing with the green. So all I'm doing is just establishing shape and form. Looking at our painting, if we can bring some titanium white in, just bring the titanium white there, but just touch the blue. Just bring a little bit of that blue into that white. You don't want to have a pure white. But bring it in like that. Just pull it in and give your palette just a little squirt every now and then. That's important. And let's have a look at clouds. So we'll put some small clouds in first. Let's get a couple of them established. Don't worry too much about over here, because this is all going to be covered in trees eventually. So just try and get rid of those pencil lines that we put in. Be loose with the brush. I'm still using the same brush. Be loose with this brush. fluff it in. Exactly the same way as we did the other clouds, and we'll get the other brush, just a little bit of damp, make sure it's damp, and then blend that in, blend the bottom of that cloud in like that. Touch a bit more white in. Now I made a mistake there, so what I'm going to do is just cover that up with a nice big cloud. And then get the other brush. Again, this is the dryish brush. And then we're trying to blend that in. You can dampen it just a touch if you want to. If it stops doing what you want it to do, then just, that's it. Just put a couple of fluffy bits there like that. Back into a cloud. And don't be afraid to put a cloud in front of a cloud. Blending that in nicely, getting rid of them hard edges. You can come back to these clouds later stage. Again, I'm just going to touch a little bit of water on my brush, taking the moisture off with a bit of kitchen rum, and then blending that in. I just want to separate that cloud from that cloud, so I just put a little bit of extra titanium white in place just for now, and when we actually come to do shadows and highlights at a later stage, we'll be playing around with these clouds once more. So let's put a few more clouds effects here now, here and there and there and here. And that's the key with clouds, is just trying to make them look as natural as we possibly can. So washing our brushes once more. So let's get a little bit more Prussian blue into this mix now. Bring in a little bit of black, a bit more Prussian blue. Bring in a touch of white, just to grey that off. In fact, you could mix a bit of that in there. Mix a bit more white. Touch more white. Let's test that then onto the canvas. It's a little bit dark, so we need to put a bit more white into that. Wash the brush if it's excessive, and we'll test the canvas again. Need a bit more white. A bit more white. So we're taking it, it's like a blue-grey, and this is what we tried to do on the small canvas. That's a little bit better. Right, so the light is coming this direction, so we want to establish a shadow coming off the mountain like that. Like I said to you before, think now of shape and form and where you think these shadows would fall. So you need to take a little bit of time on this. It's not something you can actually rush. And we are going to be knocking this back later on with a little bit of white or off-white or something. Now, if we lighten the edge of that again really well, and then bring a little bit of a matte medium mix into that, so we made that a little bit lighter. Let's go in now and then drop a few little lighter marks here and there. Don't kill all that colour that you've actually put on underneath, because that's going to be your mid-tone colour. So just put a couple of little marks here and there and here. And just build up this look. You can bring in a little bit more black now to increase that shadow colour. And it's all about picking up on the patterns that you've actually put into this mountain. Getting your little blending brush now, making sure it's semi-dry, so again wiping that on it and then blending this in all together. So you don't want those sharp edges showing, you want it to look smooth, you want it to look as if that shadow is just blending in. Now you've got to be a little bit quicker with this because sometimes it does dry on you, but don't worry about that because we're going to be putting a colour wash over it after. That's good. Okay, washing the brush, getting a fresh bit of kitchen roll in our hands, going back to the palette, make sure the brush is clean, picking up a bit of white, reasonably thin white, don't want it too thick, and then just scrub in a little bit of mist on the bottom of that mountain like that. Right, just come back, get my cup of tea, yes. Okay, so that's dried, and I hope yours is dried out as nice as mine, and it's looking as if it's got a little bit of depth there now, got a bit of mist going on in the bottom. I think I'm just going to put a very pale wash of white over the base of this, not so much on the top. I'm just going to put a wash of white over that now, and just to knock the mountain back a touch. So I'm just getting myself comfortable. We'll go to the palette and we shall sort that out. Okay, so we're at the palette now. We need our 1-inch brush, and what we're going to do, we're just going to put that into a medium mix formula and get a little bit of kitchen roll. Just wet an area of your palette down like that. And what we're doing is we're getting a bit of moisture into those bristles and get those bristles to work for us. And just tap your brush just into the corner like that. And we're trying to make a wash now of white. You've seen me do this. You've seen me do this many times. And then I go to the canvas and I'm just going to test that on the corner. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to load the brush up with that, and then to the canvas, and I'm going to go over the mountain. A bit more water to that, a touch more white. I just want to strengthen that up a bit. This is called, I call it a wash, but it's actually a glaze of acrylic, glaze of titanium white. I call it a wash because that's what I was taught, but it is actually called a glaze, so let's not confuse that issue. I'm not too worried about that line there because that's going to be obscured. Just strengthen that white a bit of touch on the corner, and then just go down the bottom of that and just taking the excess off your brush, and I just want to strengthen that mist. Go into our other brush then, making sure it's dry, and just as we did with the clouds, just rough that up a bit. And we'll leave that dry for a minute. What we're going to be looking to do, this was an old video that I did, an old painting that I did back in 2010, I think, 2011. And then I redid it again then in 2013 for YouTube. But I'm going to use that type of scene here, which I've changed around again. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want to show you the different techniques of how to do trees. And trees have got a lot of shadows in them, and there's highlights in them, they're all different colours. So it's a good example to actually use this type of painting as a foundation, because it's incorporating all the techniques that we need to make ourselves go forward. So okay, so I'm going to introduce some more colour to the palette. Okay, let's get back to the overhead cam and have a look at some colour mixing. Okay, so I put the lid on top of the palette because I use this for mixing quite a lot actually. You're going to need a palette knife or an old brush. Don't recommend you use a brush you paint with for this. And we're going to put there a bit of Van Dyke brown, and we're also going to put in a bit of Prussian blue. If you look at the quantities I'm using, a little bit less Prussian blue than Van Dyke brown. You're going to get a little bit of the Dyers in purple. Again, we need to put that there. Touch of Mars black, about the same amount. I'm going to bring in a little bit of yellow. And what I'm going to do then is mix all that together. And that's going to give me a really dark type of green. And if you don't believe me, get a little bit of white, put it to the one side, and you'll see there's a nice green colour there, or it will be. Okay. We do need to add a little bit more yellow to that actually. Just a smidgen. Now you can see it starting to go a little bit green, which is I wanted that. So I'm looking for a really dark, deep green. Again, we can test that. Let's try it again. Yeah, we've got a nice dark green. Now don't forget, like I showed you before, if you haven't mixed enough, you can always extend this with a bit of extender. You don't want to waste paint. Don't do what I did. Look, I got paint all over my hands. But I think that should be enough. If we feel that it isn't enough, then all we've got to do is add a bit of extender to it. Now, We're gonna need to select a brush for this particular thing, and I suggest we go and get ourselves an old, or if you haven't got an old, it's a size 12 or 14 round detail brush. Now this one has been battered and abused by me, and I've always got one of these, and I suggest you try and get one of these as well, because they make lovely tree patterns. Look, see? So if you want to go and buy one, get a cheap. Okay, so we need to look at our canvas now, and looking at the tree lines, we're going to have some big trees here coming down into some smaller trees there, like that. So just make some patterns. Don't go too much into the blue over there. What you're trying to do now is just block this out. Now, things in the distance are obviously lighter than they are in the front. If your paint's a bit thick, then bring a bit of paint in. Bring this colour down onto it like an angle. This. And again, all we're doing in this stage is just blocking out. Be careful you don't. You've got to leave some blue showing through then. But all we're doing here now is just blocking in colour. Leave a little bit of blue here and there. Don't kill all the blue. You put it in there, and we can maybe able to work some light rays or something coming through later on. There you go. Okay, so thinning the paint down, carry that all across the bottom of the canvas. To about roughly there. So just darken that up, all nice and dark. As you're doing this, because this is not that important, it's just a blocking of colour. As you're doing this, practice thinning down the paint, practice using your brush. You know, it's about putting paint on the canvas, but it's also about learning how the paint actually comes off the brush, which is important. And then just lighten that little bit off there. A bit more yellow. Go in there a bit more. There, like that. Just establish. Don't worry too much. Don't worry. Don't try not to damage your mounting. Just get that little bit of nice light green in there, because we're going to put some trees in there later. And the light is coming this way, so it's going to be a bit lighter there. I'm going to make that a bit of light coming in here. So just establish a little bit of a couple of little light spots here and there, because there might be some rays. I want to put some distant trees in place on the just underneath the mountain, so they need to be quite light and they need to look as if they're quite distant. And I want to come forward. I'm going to be working mainly on this section here, and I'm going to leave the main part of the trees for now. But I want to bring some trees into this area. I want to make them look really distant there, and I want to bring a little bunch of trees or something, a bit of an outcrop there, to make it look as if there is some sort of a path or something. I was thinking about doing a fallen tree or something. Yeah, so I said something a lot, and I normally do. But here we go. So let's have a look at mixing some paints for that particular process. We're going to need, in this particular instance, is a short flat. Now we're going to need to make a little bit of green. So let's start off with a small amount of yellow and a touch of Prussian blue. See how small that is? A touch. See how strong that is. So we need to bring a bit more yellow into that mix. Another tiny touch of blue. There we are. So we know that obviously blue and yellow mix green. Bring in a bit of titanium white over to that mix now, because we want to change its value. We want to make it paler. There we go. And what we're going to do now is get ourselves a bit of kitchen roll. And take the excess off, or you can take the excess off on there. And just tap in the brush. You don't want a lot of paint on you. Let's just check the colour. Okay. What we're going to do now, we're going to put little lines by pushing downwards. Put little lines there. All the way down like that. Straight across. Bring a bit more blue into that mix now. A bit more blue, a bit more yellow. And strengthen in the colour. Again, take the excess off. And then what I want to do now is in front of them, put another little row of lines like that. Don't go all over the yellow you've put down previously. And then brush that in like that. Bit of yellow. Brush a bit of that straight, neat yellow in there like that. Don't go straight up to don't go killing all what you just did, but you need to just go underneath our tree line and bring that down. If it's getting a little bit tacky, just put a bit of the medium mix on that. Bring that across under there. Like that. And at this stage, we're going to bring a bit more blue into that mix now. A bit more yellow. We're going to darken the green. A bit more medium mix formula. Take the excess off your brush. And then blend that in. Like that. Not all the way back, just about there. There's a definite difference in colour. A bit more blue, a bit more yellow. This time I'm going to bring a touch of black to the mix, just to give us a bit of a shade. I want to darken it a lot. And again, I'm bringing that in, and I'm painting on a slight angle now. Taking that rough edge off. And I'm bringing a bit more black into that mix now and darkening that up even more. A bit more blue, a bit more yellow. Just checking the colour as I go. I want a definite difference of colour. I want to bring some yellow now back there, and in this particular instance I'm just going to pick up a bit of Mars black. As you know, there is blue in that. We discussed this before. We want to make this fairly dark, this particular mix. I'm used to mixing on glass, but it doesn't matter. The only reason I moved to glass is because it was reflected onto the overhead cam. So I want a nice dark colour, this dark green. There you go. That's okay, it doesn't matter if it's not mixed 100%. And then what we're going to do then is we're going to clean our palette knife off. Palette knife. And let's have a look at the canvas. So getting our fan brush, let's just give it a bit of a wet, so we don't want to absorb too much paint into the bristles. This is actually a bristle brush. And then what you want to do is fill the brush up and then go like that and just get some paint towards the end of the brush, the edge, and then we want to come out roughly about there and push up with the brush. And push down with the brush. And then just bring that down like that. Now, using the edge of the brush, as you can see the way I'm picking up the paint off the palette, I'm going to be using the very edge then. I'm just going to go a little lines like that. Very similar to what we did at the back. Leave a couple of gaps, maybe a couple of small ones, a couple of bigger ones. Now mix a bit of black. You can pick it up with the brush, it doesn't matter. Mix a bit of black into there now. This one a little bit darker, take the excess off. Bring a bit of yellow over. You don't want it too dark. And then we're going to put another row of trees just slightly in front of those, a little bit darker. Leave a gap and put a couple of dark marks here and there like that, and again bring that down. Okay, so we need, sorry, my phone went off. Right, let's just put a bit of colour, and I'm not killing everything I've done, I'm just going that way and that way, just getting a little bit of texture in there. Okay, so I'm going to bring a bit more black into that mix again. I'm going to make this darker, and I want this quite dark, this particular green. And again, exactly the same way with a brush. and then there I'm just going to go down a line like that, and I'm going to do another line there, and then on the top of this just make that a little bit, yeah, touch on the edge, and again, and as you come down, a bit more pressure. There you go. As I said, you can use this brush, which is the short flat, exactly the same way, so make sure it's loaded. Let's put another tree there. So put a line in first, and then touch it, and as you come down, leave a couple of little gaps, but as you come down, put a little bit more pressure on the brush, but let the brush go on the edge like that. So you can do it with this brush if that's all you've got. Make sure there's a little line there. That dark mix, and then you can put another little line like that, and then the very edge of the brush again. You need to practice these. If you can't do it on the actual painting, then I suggest you get a little bit of paper or canvas or something you can play around with and practice these trees. Let's put another one there. A little bit of black into that, just to, so I can see where it is. Okay. Get into a short flat and just put in a little bit of a thing there. A line there, a line there, see. Medium mix, get it to a nice sharp point, put it to a nice sharp point like that, and then just put in a couple of lines here and there. Get a couple of branches going on. Touch of moisture, and then just bring a bit of that lightness there. Into there like that. Sweep it up a bit. Okay, as you can see, we've got some Prussian blue, we've got some cadmium medium yellow, and we've got some cadmium red. I got yellow ochre, some raw sienna, some burnt umber, and some Van Dyke brown. I'm going to add to the palette now a touch of Mars black, and I'm going to bring in just a little bit of titanium white. And these are going to be our value change spots. Let's just get rid of that thing. There we go. So I've got my medium mix formula already there. Just wetting the palette a little bit with some of the formula. Getting a bit of kitchen roll. And we need a mix of green. So there's two ways we can do this. We can either use a little bit of black and a touch of yellow. And that's going to give us a nice green, which is like a mid-tone green. It's quite a dark green, so that's what I'm looking for. Maybe a little bit lighter than that. There we go. not using any white and just mixing the yellow, because you know the Mars black has got the blue in it. So just tapping the brush on the edge like that, picking up a little bit, and then again exactly the same as we did when we made these trees. We're just going to go in with the very edge of the brush, but not going all over the black. Sorry, not the black, the dark. Just picking up a little bit on the edges there. And again on this particular tree. And just flicking up a little bit. A bit of a clumpy bit there. So I'm pushing up with the brush. But I'm not killing all our black. Now, using just the corner of this mix, we'll add a little bit more yellow to that. Bring in a touch of blue, only a touch, because Prussian blue is quite strong. And it's a much lighter colour, as you can see the difference there. And now what the blue does, it just takes away that yellowness, so it's just a little touch of blue, but just to take away that yellowness. And then again, just on the edge now, here and there, very sporadically with this, very sparingly. Just put a couple of little bits here and there, and there and here, just to build that tree up, and just to show it like as if it's highlights there. A bit more yellow on the edge of that one again. But it doesn't matter if this is a little bit yellow now. And what we're going to do is just on the back of that tree, just a couple of little tiny little drip bits and pieces like that. Because don't forget, all this is going to be in shadow here, and this is going to be a bit brighter here because the sun is actually going to be catching it. And you see how I left that dark spot there? Now that looks as if there's shadows there. It looks as if it's under the tree. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to get some Van Dyke brown, some black, some Prussian blue, some yellow. Make a nice dark colour. And very similar to what we've done here, so I want to put another tree here. So I'm going to think about where I'm going to do this. I don't want to kill that one, so I want to try and get this tree roughly there. It's going to be a bit taller, and again starting at the top. And then we're going to put a clumper there, like that. So darken underneath there now. You think we may have destroyed that tree there, but you can still see it through, so give your brush a little wash now, get rid of that dark colour, just wash it in some water, get the majority of that off, and then go back into this colour that we mixed, and then very lightly and go into the second highlight colour, and again very lightly on the one side, and then the brightest colour, and we can add a little bit more yellow to that now, and you can bring in a little bit of white just to brighten it a bit, and then we want to put that just on the one side. A little bit in the front there, and then push up there a little bit on this one side here as well. Because this colour is lighter than that colour, it looks as if it's in front of it. Now that's going to go into the darker colour, that's going to go into shade there now. So add a little bit of dark to that. And let's just get that a little bit darker there. Just pushing up. We can put a bush in or something there. A little bit of dark. We've only used one brush so far. Now, what we want to do now is establish this network there of branches. So again, let's mix up a bit of colour now. Let's get a bit more yellow. We'll put a brush and blue to that. We want to change things up a bit. We don't want all the same type of greens. Put a bit of white into that. And if your brush is getting thick, use your little cloth. Let's bring a little bit of brown into that just to change things up a bit, and then just tap in, tap in. We'll pick up a small short flat now for this. So let's just add a little bit of black to that. Let's just change that up a bit more yellow. Now you don't have to be dead on with these particular mixes. And then splay the edge. So all you want is basically a dark green, a mid green, and a very light green. And then we're just going to do this effect. Watch now. I'll do a little bit bigger because we can paint over it after. All I'm doing is very lightly just press it against the edge of the brush so we can get some sort of a pattern with the splayed bristles going in there like that. Not going all over the complete bits that we've already painted. We just put in little dips and dobs in here and there. Put in this way a little bit. Yeah. Now let's lighten that a bit more. Just on the edge, nice and bright. Put a bit of yellow with that. Bring a bit of blue in. Take the excess off your brush. Spray it, push it into the canvas like that. Spray it, and then coming back to the painting, and then just put a couple of highlights here and there. Pick up a bit more paint. A couple of more highlights here and there. Pick up a bit more paint. And this is what you've got to do now. You've got to make sure there's a nice brush. Think of the patterns as well. Don't just put these on willy-nilly. You've got to think of, because we know there might be light coming through here, so it's going to pick up some light on these. Don't forget, acrylic dries darker, so it's important to remember that. What I'm doing now is I'm drawing in. Right, I want it to come down here, so I'm going to put a little bit of, this is just an underpainting now. I'm going to be putting a glaze of colour over this later on. Now, going into your Van Dyke brown, I haven't washed my brush. Let's develop this little line coming through there, which is going to be a path. You can see why I've left the green on my brush, because it's lightening up the brown automatically for me. I want this to come down there like that. So all you got to do is put in a base, an underpainting, and you can put in a couple of different browns and all different colours in there, because we're going to be putting a wash over that later on, or should I say a glaze over that later on. So just get the bones of this path in place, and if you've gone a bit wild in some places and not in others, it doesn't matter, because you can always paint grass over it later on anyway. So let's get this path in place, using a little bit of yellow ochre, a little bit of raw sienna, just to strengthen this path up, just to get a little bit of lightness in there. Get a bit of back into the Van Dyke brown, going over that, blend it all in. What we're working on now, as we're doing this, we're concentrating on, you know, does that path look well? Right, that path is going to a vanishing point, you know, so are those trees. So we're trying to think of that. Putting this grass in. Now we've got to decide, are we going to put a rock in here, or are we going to put, we could put a fallen tree across there. Let's have a look what that looks like. So let's just say we put a bit of old tree trunk coming in like that. And this is the joys of acrylic, because if you didn't like where this lays, then you can always paint over it. With oil colours, you've got to scrape it off. So let's just put a tree trunk there. It looks pretty good already. Now that's giving it depth. So we've got a fallen tree, a couple of branches maybe here somewhere, we're gonna the road. Let's make that road a little bit wider there. Good, okay, so we need to clean our brushes. Now I'm going to be using, you can use a short flat, but this is actually a bristle brush. I want to introduce you to a bristle brush. They're normally used for oil paintings, but when you're doing scenes like this, the strength of this brush is a wonderful thing. You've also got small little brushes like that as well. And these are ideal for grass, and I will show you now, introduce you to this. So let's mix up a bit more green. I'm using a palette knife now in this case. Just bringing a bit of black in. Not all over. So when I mean not all over, don't just do that, because what's going to happen, you're going to end up with a big clump of yellow, and you don't want that. You just sporadically put these little marks in place. I'll do a bit more this side as well now. You can use a brush on the edge and that on the end. You can get some lovely shapes with this. As I said, don't worry if it's too light, because what we can do later on is we can darken these up. And I'll show you what I mean in a minute. So let's put a nice bush there like that. Don't go onto your path, don't worry about that, we can put that in place later on. So we can put another type of tree here now. So think of the tree when you're doing this now. Have fun, just make patterns. Don't forget, this is going to dry darker, and then we can put some more lights in there later on. You do need to practice. Mixing a little bit of black now into that green. That one is a darkish colour, because I want to put some darker colours in here now. Not destroying all our black that we put on. Just bringing in a couple of different tones of colour now. Bringing in a bit of yellow now, just on the edge. And then back there. And push it up with a brush and just drag in a couple of marks here and there. Don't forget, this is an underpainting stage, so I'm not overly worried if it looks a bit weird at this particular moment in time, because it always looks weird when we're doing this. All I'm doing is establishing blocks of colour for the moment. Okay, so we need to wash the brush, and then we need to let that dry before we can go on to the next stage. So the next stage of this is going to be putting in some shadow areas now. So we need to darken up, because we put the lights in place and midtones and highlights, we need to put some shadows in there now, darken it a touch, then we can lighten it again, and that's the process that we're going to do, because this area is all bright now, where it needs to be slightly darker, because it's always darker in the foreground and going light to the background. Now the reason we put a lot of lights in there is that we can put a glaze of greens and blacks and shadows, colours. You'll see what I mean in a moment. This area is going to be predominantly bright anyway, because I want some light to come through there, this way. But those trees are virtually finished now, there and there. We just need to darken this area up a touch. We can be working on the path. So that's the next job now, is to put some shadows in, darken these greens up. We can work a bit on the path. So that'll be the next job. So try to get this stage. If you're not confident enough to go into the painting straight away with a brush, get a canvas, practice these techniques, practice before you actually go and damage your painting. There's nothing you can't damage it because you just paint over it. What I'm saying is sometimes it's better just to get an old canvas and practice the techniques that I'm showing you in these stages. I haven't cleaned it, and that doesn't matter. So we're going to put a little bit of Mars black down there, and we need to select our brush. Firstly, I think, where did I put it? I don't know, but we'll use this pot for now. Make sure it is free and clean. And we're going to put a little bit of matte medium mixture. It's that particular one there. We're going to put that into our pot. Only a couple of teaspoonfuls, or tablespoonfuls I should say, and add a little bit of water to that as well. Now we're going to need a soft brush for this particular instance, and I think the best brush to use maybe is this particular one here, which is the 3/4 flat. This does happen to be a watercolor brush, because the reason I use that is because it's a nice and soft, and I like using nice and soft brushes for glazing. I'm also going to be bringing in a detail brush, which is a number 10. Again, that's nice and soft. Now, as you know, I put them into the the water pail just to get some water on them. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to switch my phone off because I heard it going ping, and that's the last thing we want to do, is get disturbed during this video. Okay, and back to the palette. Now, we always got to hand our trusty kitchen roll, so we just need to take off the excess moisture on the brush. And then let's mix up a wash. So put in this one side safely and just putting down an area there with a bit of the medium mix formula, and then just bringing in some black, and as you can see it's gone quite thin, and that's all we need as far as that is concerned. So you're looking for quite a runny, inky type of mix. And we're going to transfer that now to the canvas. So looking at the canvas, all we're going to do firstly, so you can get used to it, is just let's make that just a little bit thicker. Just test it in a corner. There we are. See how can you see that black going on there? Just put a little bit more black to it. Get it like an ink. And we'll just put that over. Now it's exactly the same way as we did with the mountains when we put in the mist in place, and that's what you're looking to achieve here. And don't forget, just keep mixing it back up regular. Don't make it too thick, but don't make it too thin. Something like that is ample. All you're trying to do is put a coating of paint, a very thin paint, over the surface of what you've already painted, because like the clouds, if you put clouds in there now and you painted blue over them in a wash like this, then the white would adopt that colour, and this is exactly what you've done here. And then get in your other brush just to blend that in, because we don't want to go all the way up there. This area is in shadow. Increasing the black just a touch into this corner, and then taking that up just under those trees there like that. So leaving this area clear, and then bringing that black across here like that. Now this can be done several times in fact, and it's until you get that ideal feeling of shadowing. And this is all we're doing, just mixing a bit more up now. All we're doing is going down the side of this tree there. It's a little bit thicker, and just blend that in like that. And when we do in landscapes and seas and lakes and all manner of different types of things, we need to be very conscious of where these shadows are going to be lying. So all this is an easy way of putting those shadows in place. Mixing up the paint just a little tiny bit thicker, just to do this corner. As you know, when we do in scapes, we do a little bit of a dark area here, and this is all we're doing. There. Now I've painted over where I actually originally painted that branch, so when we put another branch in on top of that, that'll look like as if that's an underlying shadow, and that's what we're looking to do. So putting the big brush away now and getting your small detailed brush like that, and again back into your paint. Again, thin as ink, and then in here just increase the shadow areas here and there and there and here, just to give this a bit of depth. Taking the excess off onto some kitchen roll now and just blending all that in. Put a little bit here. Use your initiative now. Where you think you'd like it to be darker, and just put some shadows in. Let's get rid of that bright bit of blue there. A little bit darker, a bit more black. Take it off on your kitchen roll, and then just put a couple of little dots here and there and here, here and there and there and here. And again, under this tree is going to be really dark, and in there is going to be dark, look. There. Give your brush a little wash, take the excess off, so you've just got a damp brush, and then just blend that smoothly in like that. And then we can bring in a couple of areas here and there, because we're going to put paint on top of this again later on. We're going to increase the colour of this grass. And just over there a little bit on that edge, bottom edge there. We need to make that a little bit darker also. Again, just under that edge there. And when I'm showing you this, be mindful of what I'm doing, how I'm using the brush, because we don't always use a brush like this. On this particular instance, I'm using on the edge, and I'm just touching here and there, not actually painting as such. I'm just putting in where I think the shadows are going to be, and then just increasing that depth of colour. And it's going to be darker in there. Like that. Get rid of that bright spot. There we go. Don't want that bright spot there. It's too bright. It's taking the eye away from the painting. In fact, let's put a little bit more black over that like that, just to dull it back really well. And then here and there and there and here and here and there and there and here. And then just increase just the shadows a little bit. Be very careful you don't destroy what you've already painted, because this is a thin wash, it's not going to be strong anyway. And then we want to go a little bit on the vertical and across like that. Okay, so let's have a look. What have we got here? We've got some burnt umber, we've got some burnt sienna, we've got some, we've got some there. There we are. Get a flat, not a flat, what is that? A detail brush, number 10 detail brush. And let's get a little bit of yellow ochre there and a bit of burnt umber and mix that up to see what that looks like. Don't be afraid to experiment. That's a nice hearthy type of colour. Bring a bit of black into that, just turn that into a shade. We don't want it too light. I want to go more towards the dark part of that colour. Twisting the brush, I'll take the excess off in a little cloth. And then going into the painting, just drag that in like that, just to lighten that path up a touch. In fact, we can just bring a little bit of that colour in, just lighten that a bit more. There. And don't be afraid to bring it in, drag it through like that. Take the excess off your brush. Just pull that through and that. Get a nice creamy mix going. And then again, go underneath. A bit darker. You want a definite shadow underneath this log. Now, with the edge of the brush, the very point, get it to a nice point, and then just put some lines sporadically down that trunk. Going into the lighter one again, and it's just building up all these different tones. Very lightly dragging the brush across and getting these different tones to sit and blend really together, but not too much. You don't want a definite clean blend like that. You want this to look rough, because bark on trees is rough. And we're going to let that dry. Now, the path, what we need to do in this instance is to get some masking tape. And we just want to mask that path off like that. and that into there. So what I suggest you do, if you haven't got one of these, which is a bristle brush, and it's quite a short flat, and it literally is a short flat, and you can hear it's quite rough. Get a toothbrush. Any old toothbrush will do for exactly for this technique, and that's all you need is a toothbrush. So let's get back to the canvas, and I'm going to show you how this works. Now let's start off again with this mix. So we get a bit of that raw sienna, I think it was raw sienna, and let's put a bit of Van Dyke brown with that. Let's put some more Van Dyke brown out. My palette needs cleaning now before the next stage. We need to mix that up to quite a darkish colour. Don't want it too bright, see? And then get your brush, or your toothbrush, and tap it into the paint and get it loaded like that. And what you're going to do is you're going to get your finger and you're going to pull it towards you like this. So you get to the board, to the palette. A bit in the sky then, I'm going to have to sort that out in 1 second, maybe. Just, if it's a bit thick, take the moisture off, pick it up. If it's a bit thick, just moisten it a touch. Take the excess off, again. Go quite close. And don't worry about the stuff in the sky. I suggest you mask all that out. Don't worry about going down there because that's in the distance. You're not going to see so much pebbles and that then. And maybe go into a little bit of yellow ochre just to get a different effect. That'll do for now. Clean the brush and wash your finger. Now you can see on here I'm picking up a small detail brush, which is a number 5. See these big lumps, so we just turn them into little rocks, look. You can put a couple of little marks here and there, make it look as if they're a couple of these are bigger rocks. And these yellow ones are a bit bright, but we can alter that. There we are. Undo. Now, we need to let that dry. Okay, so all you need to do now is remove the masking tape, and I would suggest you, as you do it, be very, very careful and pull down. Make sure this is a low tack masking tape, and if you don't know what low masking tape is, it means that the adhesive is not as strong as normal. But you can always tap it onto your clothing like that, and that'll pick up the fibres and stop the masking tape being too sticky. Now, be very careful you don't pull anything off as you're doing this. And just slowly remove the masking tape as such. And if you have got any splashes onto the sky, well, I suggest you, before you do what I've done, I've got splashes in there, but I'll turn them into some birds, so don't worry about that. But we should mask that out anyway, so just take this away like that. And all of a sudden you've got a path with some stones and gravel on. As you can see, it's quite effective. So what we've got to do, we've got to darken up under here now. I'm going to work a little bit more on these trees, and we'll put some shadows in here and some shadows underneath the stones, on the side of the stones, and just darken them off a touch. But there's not a lot else we have to do to this path now. Just knock it back a little bit by there. We'll work on this tree a little bit more, get the detail into that, build up a few more highlights and shadows. So what we could do is put another dark wash of black over these now, knock them back and build them back up a touch. Because don't forget, I know landscapes are supposed to be darker in the foreground than the midground, and then going back, fading away. Just knock my brush out. But leaves and grass are leaves and grass at the end of the day, so we've got to be careful we don't go too dark with the greens, because it'll look too dark. So what we're going to do is just keep building this up now, and once we get the tones and the values that we want in this area, then the rest of it is easy. We can put some tree trunks in and some branches, and we can put some more grass in here and some flowers, and before you know it, we'll have this finished as soon as that. We did some work on the road. We put some rocks in the path. We've highlighted the tree just a little bit to give it a bit of depth. Now I think we need to put this section now to bed, and what I'm going to do is, I got a couple of spots in the sky. I'm going to turn them into some birds, because I don't want to worry too much about those spots and paint over them. I might put a little bit more work in the clouds now, and I'm thinking about putting another tree or something, a little feature tree there, just to take your eye down this road. And I'm going to put some more grass in, increase the grass area here, put some twigs and one thing and another, get this tree done, get some grass in, and I'm hoping we'll get this finished today. So without further ado, let's have a look at the palette. Okay, we need to mix some green now. You can either use a palette knife for this, or you can use a brush. We'll use a brush in this case, because that's more than likely what you've got. And as always, I always put a little bit of medium mix formula down just to wet my mixing area. Now, starting with the yellow, I'm going to put 2 piles of yellow in. There's a reason for that. The first pile of yellow, I'm just going to put a little touch of blue. You see now how much I put into that. See how strong that blue is? And then just increase the blue, so you can increase it by just adding. Don't put too much in at a time. I want quite a dark-ish colour there. There you go. We can always bring a little bit more yellow in. There you go. Just a touch more yellow into that, just to take that blueness away and get more of a green. And then take that onto your little pad. Now Mars black again into this yellow. You can see it's got a slightly different shade to it, a bit more yellow now. There. Take the excess off and wash your brush. Looking at the canvas, we need to select a little brush now. This brush is very similar to the large bristle brush that we used in an earlier stage, but it's just a small one which I've de-stressed. And if you go into your paint exactly the same way as we did before, and then go onto the canvas, and just, that's a little bit too dark, so we need to lighten that edge up a bit more. We don't want the same colour, we need a definite contrast. That's better. Just to pick up that little bit of green. Now this is not light that we put in here, this is just different greens that you'll see on a tree. So it's not actually like reflections, you know, highlights I should say. This is more of just that tone of green we're looking for. And all it does is just lift that colour out. Now in this area here, obviously there's going to be a bit of light coming through, so if we bring a little bit of white into the edge of that mix, like that, in exactly the same way, spray this brush and then just bring that light, like as if the light is catching, it's springing through there. And this is what we need to do, is just on that edge. Now we can do a little bit down there and there, and just a little bit on that edge there. I'm just trying to smooth that away. There, like that. And then we pick this edge up. Just checking my head's not in shot. Back into our fan brush. Do you remember that in the early stage? Again, going into this nice light colour we mixed. And if it's running a bit low, just add a little bit more yellow to it. And then again, just touch. Yeah, that's okay. Just come in, again exactly the same way, but this time we can just go over the edge of the path like that. Make it look as if it's long grass. On the edge, some longer blades in there. Bit more yellow, just increase that colour. Don't overload your brush if you can help it. And what I'm doing, I'm pushing in, flicking up, and then doing that very quickly. So I'm pushing in, flicking up, pushing in, flicking up, pushing in, flicking up. Now here I don't want to go too dark, too light, so I want to bring in a little bit more dark. I'm just going to very lightly now do the same stroke. Because this will darken, and if it's a bit light, then it's not a problem, because we can do exactly what we did earlier. And then we can just chuck a bit of black over the top of that. The goal here is to make it look as if it is grass. And again, in this area, we can put some grass areas and little bits of bushes, and we're going to darken that off later on. And as I've said, it's all about layers and building up those looks of grass. And again, down here now, what I want to do now, I've got my brush nice and clean, and then again I want to go back into that white, and I'm going to put a little bit of white over that green area there, Just rub it with my finger because it's a little bit bright and I just want to knock it back. Like that. Let's have a bit of fun now. Let's get a strip liner brush. Get it nice and wet. Get a little bit of black. Don't want this too runny, but you want it like an ink. You pull it to a nice sharp edge and then put your hand down. So you might not have to do this, but I'm going to do it because I've got some marks here. Just going to put a little bird there. I'm going to put another bird there. Another bird there. And a tiny bird there. And a tiny little bird there. Looks like they're all flying the same way. There you go. A little bit of white. Just put a bit of white. Just here and there. Yeah, okay, I'm happy with that. We've got a bit of Van Dyke brown. Now I'm going to do exactly the same thing with this. I'm going to make an ink mix. I'm going to pull in my brush to a point, and I'm thinking of putting maybe an old tree here. Just pull out a few branches off this one. And this is all about getting this to flow properly. It's an old tree that's about ready to fall down. Thicken that edge up a bit. Put another big trunk in there. Let's go in there like that. So this is an old tree ready to fall down, and a bit thick there. Let's put a bit of white on this tree now. I'm just dragging a bit of white through onto the tree. Make it look as if it's an old, rickety old, rotten tree. It's had a hard life, this tree. Definitely had a hard life, this one. There we are. And just give it a little bit of colour. There we are, pull that white through. It looks as if it's old and rotten and there's no leaves on it. Take a little bit of white over to the Van Dyke brown. Let's put a couple more little branches here and there. And this stage now is all about like detailing and just using your imagination. Let your imagination run wild with you. And just to balance it off, let's just put a couple of the twigs here and there with the same colour. That just allows for balance. And yeah, that's all it's about. Okay, so we'll wash that brush. Again, we go into a detail brush, back into the Van Dyke brown and a little bit of white mix, it doesn't really matter. And looking at the trunk, and we're just going to put just increase this colour of this tree now. This is an old dead tree. A bit of dark underneath. What I'm going to do is mix a bit of, I'm going to bring some of this Van Dyke brown there. I got a bit of Diazian purple here, which I'm going to add to that because I want to darken that, not too much. I'll darken that up. Bit of green. And I just want to put some really dark lines here and there and there and here onto this log, because that's going to be in shadow there. A little bit of white on the one edge, because I want it to look as if it's starting to rot. And then bring that up, put that branch in there. We're going to put a glaze over this later on with a bit of burnt umber. I just want to get this edge to look lighter. Bit of Van Dyke brown now. Just let that dry off a little bit. So looking at the composition, it is not far away, to be quite honest. We can put a very light, if we get a brush, an inch brush, and we get a mid-tone green, let's thin that down and then just lightly go over the green that we've already put in, just to enrich that. It's just, what we're doing is just putting a glaze over that. And we could just bring a touch of black, a bit more yellow. That's the one with the black, isn't it? That's what we wanted. That's the one we want. A bit more black to that. Take the excess off your brush. Okay, put a bit there. Let's make a bit of a black wash like we did earlier. Let's bring a bit of this yellow into that. So it's not a dark black, it's more a dirty green really. Putting that in there on the bottom of that tree as well. Just increase the shadows somewhat. You should be able to put some of that over here as well now, just to kill back that brightness. That we put in earlier. You can even go over the tree if you want. And now what I've done there, I made a little mistake and I've gone over my sky. So if you're very quick, get a little bit of water on a kitchen roll, squeeze it off, and you should be able to just pull that away off the sky. Okay, so let's wash the brushes. Okay, so all that needs to be done now is final details really. I think this is just about finished, so let's just put a few more blades of grass into that area there, and we're going to darken this tree off now with some Van Dyke brown. We're just going to do a wash on that and just increase the length of some of these blades of grass, because we don't want it too light there. And we'll just bring a few blades here, a couple of flowers in, you know, because there's always flowers in the woods, you know, snowdrops and bluebells and that type of thing, so we need to have a look at that. And then I think we'll just bring a couple of light streaks of light coming through, like as if the sun is over there and it's just coming through, and I think that's all we need to do to this, and we'll call that done then. So okay, so first of all let's darken up this tree trunk. So in exactly the same way as we did it previously, I'm just going to use this 3/4 and just pick a section of a palette, and let's just bring a little bit of brown over there. And this is all a wash at the end of the day. This is all we want to worry about. Getting some kitchen roll ready, taking the excess off, and then very carefully try not to go onto the green. Just put this wash over the fallen tree trunk. And when we're doing landscapes such as this, sometimes less is more, so we need to think of that. And by that I mean I'm just changing my brush now. I'm going into a detail brush. That'll do. By that I mean you don't want to put too much detail into something, because sometimes it's more effective when you've got less going on. Now we don't want to kill all that nice light wood, because it's all rotten. There's another little stick there. This is all rotten and falling apart, and you know, all these little bugs eating it, and it's all going to fall apart shortly. So let's get a little bit of black, a little bit of brown. Let's just increase the colour in there. I'll just pull a little bit of light in there now, just to try and look as if it's big pieces snapped off somewhere. I don't know where it's gone. It's over there in the wood somewhere. And just darken this, and just play with this now. Just put a bit of dark in here. Don't forget, don't kill all that. Let me get a bit of shadow going in here. Just on that far edge there. Get a short flat now and just use that as a blender, and then just blend that in. And it looks as if the bottom of the trunk is merged with the grass, and it might have actually. Might be there, it might have just sunk into the grass. There we are. Bit of a shadow going under there from the residual paint. Just blend that in. Just wet your brush and then just take off that paint. You can get a bit of tissue paper if you wanted to and just rub that through like that. Okay, let's just wash these brushes. Back into the fan brush and a bit more of this grass, and then just flick up a few, and I very lightly, just on the edge, just a few blades, and just catching the light as grass does. And you can see already, because I put a light over that, now it looks as if that's actually lying in the grass, which is what we want, the effect we want. And like I said, if you've got a bit light, don't worry, we can always darken that up later. A little lighter spots now. Let's just get a touch of white into that, just to change the value of that yellow green. Put a bit of blue into it, a bit more yellow. Let's make it more of a green rather than a blue. And then bring a bit of white over. There. Take the excess off your brush, and then just put a couple of highlight bits of grass. There's a reason for this. I'm doing this in a second, and I'm going to put another bunch of grass there. And back to the script liner brush where I put it. I didn't know how these. Let's put a bit more blue into that. Bit more yellow. Don't want this too bright. Let's try to see what it looks like. That's a bit bright. Right, we want it darker than that. Bit of a nice blue green. That's how does that look? You see, I still light. So let's put a bit of black into that. Knock it back. And don't be afraid to experiment. It's not a colour mixing. Sometimes is not just about following colour charts. It's about seeing what actually works on the painting. Now that's quite a nice. It looks dark on the palette, but it looks quite nice on the painting. So just what I'm doing is I'm dragging them up. And then just think about where these would be going. You've got a couple of long ones here and there. Don't forget these do dry darker. And I get him going in all different directions. And again on the back of the trunk here, because the grass is there and the tree is lying there and the blades of grass are fighting for the light, and they coming up and behind the tree and try to get at the light. And don't forget, this is not grass like you'll find in your garden. This is wild grass, so it will tend to be really wild because nobody goes along and cuts it with a lawnmower. And this is all you're trying to do, is make a representation of something. Again, just get a few blades of grass just to come across, and you can get them here as well. could be little rushes or something, or it could be ferns. You can put ferns in there. You just use it, the edge of the brush stroke, just put little spots here and there and here, just to again make a representation of that. These might be ferns popping out like that. And let's get a bit of blue. Let's mix a white with our blue. A bit more white with our blue. There we are. So we've got a nice blue colour. And we can put a couple of dots of blue here and there. You like bluebells or something. You get a couple of dots of white now. Not too many of these. Not too many of these. There you go. We could get a nice red. We haven't got red on the palette, so put a bit of red out. And again, very gently with this. Don't put too much red in. Just a little bit here and there, because it's a really good colour to pull the eye in, and pretend there's some foxgloves or something there. There you go. Very subtle, but they are there. And we can put in a couple of yellows, little bits. Very gently. I'll just drag the eye in. I'll put a couple more over there. And you can just, don't try not to overdo that if you can help it. And I would say that was just about finish our lesson, so we'll just put a couple of highlights here and there like that, and then I'll show you another quick little trick before we wrap this up. Okay, so I'm back. Oh, I forgot to put my light on. Okay, so I'm back, and right, we need to have a look at the palette now, because we're going to use some glazing medium, and that's about the last thing that we're going to actually be doing. So back to the palette, and we need some glazing medium, which is that there. You can get this in different manufacturers, and what I suggest you do is just put a small amount onto the palette. Now you can see I cleaned my palette purposely for this, and we're going to need some titanium white on your touch. Again, I always put titanium white in this corner now. Get some out, there we go. We don't want a lot, and we're going to need a nice clean brush, and I suggest you've got more control over a small 1/2 inch square like that. And we just need to mix a bit of our medium mix with that, and then bring a touch of white in. Just test it on your palette. There we go. Yeah, okay. Now I want you to be a bit bold here. load your brush, take the excess off, and wherever you've got these gaps, I've got a gap there, look, I'm just going to bring a line like that, see? Now you can see why I put the grass there. And then I'm going to put another little line there like that. And trust me, I know it doesn't look much at the moment, but when this dries, it's going to look like as if there's a bit of sun shining through, because we put that bit of white in there. It's going to look as if there's a bit of a bit of sun shining through the trees. And that's all we need to do. And getting our strip liner once again, and because we got a bit of white on the palette, we'll use white for this particular signing. And you can decide wherever you want to sign your paintings. It's normally in the right or the left, but Vermeer used to sign it up in top left hand corner. It's entirely up to you where you want to actually sign it. But when you've actually decided to sign it, then I'm going to sign it just here, and you just need to use your name, use your initials, whatever you want to do. I personally don't date them, but that's entirely up to you.